Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Wow.
My name is Tantoh Dieudonné, but many people call me Farmer Tantoh. So I am a grassroots environmental activist and a farmer. So I am based in Cameroon. So I'm an Ashoka Fellow, and recently I was elected into the Making More Health Fellowship in Germany.
Wow, congratulations.
Yes.
Great. I have seen your videos, the eco village that you created. It's really lovely. And in one video you talk about how to find water, and you show this with the needles. I found it so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Native Americans told you this, the way to do it, is that right?
That's right.
Yes. And I find it so interesting that we somehow come back to like indigenous wisdom, old wisdom. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Saying indigenous knowledge, is knowledge that you can never learn it in school. You learned it by experiencing what is happening around you. When you live in your environment for so long, you get to master everything that is happening around your environment. Because nature teaches us. Nature is the greatest teacher. And when you observe your environment, you learn from nature, and then you become the professor, because you know your environment better than any other person who has never lived in that environment. That's how indigenous knowledge comes from.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. And could you tell us, or I was interested in what are the biggest challenges for you in your work?
I'm sorry, internet is not really the best. I don't know. That is.
We deal with it. We try.
Okay, you asked about my biggest challenges?
Yes.
Internet is part of the big problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No access to internet. So the other challenges I face is like accessibility, like to get into the rural communities. At times the roads are very rough, and one needs like a 4-wheel drive, to get into the villages because of poor road networks.
Yeah.
Maybe on the water issue, is the development like more negative, or is there also positive? So how can they realize the development of, for example, technological help, or even like climate crisis?
In the northwest region of Cameroon, there is a big difference in relation to water issues, because in my program, we've been able to consult and construct over 60 water projects that is providing safe drinking water to more than 50,000 people. But because the population is increasing, there is still demand for more water projects to be initiated, because people have cut down trees in mountains, in watersheds, and because of climate change, many springs are gradually disappearing. And that is why there is still need for more water projects to be initiated. There is still need for trees to be planted in spring water catchment. Communities need to be sensitized on the importance of protecting water catchments, especially planting of trees. They still need to be sensitized on the importance of water harvesting, of digging more wells, planting lawns, planting trees, to fight climate change. But in overall, there is a huge, big difference, because I'm not the only one carrying out water projects in my region. There are other organizations or NGOs, in other parts of the Northwest region that are doing a lot of water projects as well. So I'm just contributing, to solve these water issues in my region.
Yes. Do you do this independently, or are you related to an institution? What do the government that is how they see your work? They Do they welcome your work? Do they support your work? Or you need to struggle with them, with bureaucracy?
I'm a grassroots activist. I work at the grassroots. And when I go to carry out any water projects, I always try to incorporate women to play leadership roles when it comes to water projects. Because women are the highest users of water in the household. So when you try to incorporate them to play leadership roles, you will be successful in your projects. It is kind of interesting that due to a lot of bureaucracy, it is always difficult, to get even funding from the government. So I depend on the government just to get paperwork and authorization. I do crowdfunding to support my work. I host a lot of international volunteers that come from all over the world. When they see my work, they also act as ambassadors to send the message out. So I get this money and I depend on the community to also provide at least 30 to 40% of what they can afford, especially local materials like sand, stones, and labor to dig pipelines, etc. So the little donations that I get is going directly to purchase just like cement and pipes and then pay for technical labor. My organization is called Save Your Future Association. It's a grassroots non-profit organization which I founded in 2005, and it was all voluntary, bringing young people and communities to volunteer. But because we've been having some political instability for over the past 5 years now. So my programs kind of slowed down in the communities. But now I am in the phase of transitioning from Save Your Future Association to the Farmer Tantoh's Foundation. So I'm now creating a foundation to see how we can now start to gather funds and then to support grassroots initiatives in the rural communities and even in the cities. And I'm also in the process of building an ecological village in my town. And this ecological village is going to be like a center to attract people from all over the cities to come and then learn how to take care of the environment.
Since the oral traditions are being lost, or the indigenous knowledge is being lost along the way, have you made some initiative to pass it on, that it is preserved for other generations to keep practicing the similar practices you use in your work?
So when I get to the old people and I make friends with them and they share with me this indigenous knowledge on how to maybe work on environment, how to work with water, how to work with nature. So actually I'm in a process where I tapped the indigenous knowledge from the old people, I document some, and I pass it to the younger generation. So it's kind of interesting that, the old people, even though they have never been to school, they don't even have any certificate, but what they have in their minds, it's more than somebody who has been to school to obtain a PhD.
How do you see the role of, Europe or Germany? What do you think could we do better or differently or contribute? Is there something that you have in mind?
Because I remember when I was in the States, many young people take water for granted. People would take a shower for 30 minutes, for 1 hour in the shower, of which here people will walk for miles just to have a jar of drinking water. So if we could have a program where the Western world directly identifies what grassroots people are doing in other parts of the world and come in to share their story, to identify what they are doing, and to support them directly to work with the communities, we are going to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal by the year 2030. And one of the goals is safe drinking water. Water is life.
Do you know of any artists in your village or surrounding or in Cameroon who are dealing also with water or sustainability or with the notion of climate change?
In my region or in my country here in Cameroon, there are a lot of arts groups who are working on, doing performances of arts. So in my town, I know of a certain art group which I've worked personally with them as well, because they do a lot of performance on arts, on environment, on climate change, etc. And they are called La Liberté Arts Group. So it will be interesting that I'm going to connect you with this La Liberté Arts Group, because one of their goals is that they have always been looking for a situation where they could have a partner organization in Europe so that they can share ideas on how they can scale up, they can scale up their artwork by performing, a lot of shows on environment and climate change, etc.
Since you can't reach different parts of your country to support them with the little you have, does that mean that those small villages or like faraway villages are being condemned to suffer the most because of that accessibility problem?
One of my dreams has always been, how can I access these remote communities and train them practically on how they can go about their water issues, their watersheds, their springs, etc. And that is why one of our goal is to acquire a four-wheel drive, a Land Cruiser four-wheel drive that can plow these rough roads and get right to the remote villages. But working at the grassroots, I master all of these rural communities, and the main issue now is accessibility to get there and then train the people.
I would just like to know how the kids receive the work you do to them. So how do they realize the injustice they experience actually with the water issue, and then how maybe you have a story to tell of someone who got really inspired by your work and who could change his or her life.
And I read to all the children from grade 1 to grade 6 with all their teachers, and I share with them my story and what prompted me to get into water issues, because I drank dirty water and I contracted typhoid, and I suffered of typhoid for 7 years. And when I got healed, it became a turning point in my life, like a burden, to make sure that no one should die of something that is necessary for life, and that is water. And because some of these schools now, at the peak of dry season, the children have to walk far away to get water, I didn't want to see that. So now the schools that I've worked with them, when I present my story, I share my life story, and when everybody gets the concepts of clean water now, then I start now to teach them about water hygiene and sanitation. In one of around the neighborhood where we built a water project, so one of a little boy of about 5 years came to carry water, and he was so timid, he was like afraid. When he got the water in his container and started walking away, at about 30 meters, he turned and smiled. Water is life. It's such a fulfillment to see how little children are being fulfilled by drinking clean water. A family of 18 people, they were drinking directly from the same source with their cattle. The cattle will defecate in the same source, and they will also come and drink from the same source. So when I got about these people and I visited their village right in a remote community, and just with $600, I used my personal money, $600, to put some materials together, and then they all joined us, and then we harnessed the spring and built the spring that they could carry their water, and then we connected the spring underground and then channeled it into a pipeline and built a cattle drinking trough 50 meters away. The eldest family member of the community testified that after having drinking this water for 2 years, none of the family member has gotten sick again because of the clean water. From there, he was so inspired, and it is now a movement how he is teaching other communities living isolated in the hills on how to harness and protect springs. And this was really a fulfillment for me, because just this little gesture transformed their lives.
How do you perceive this fact that people have to walk so many miles, that it takes so much time away from their life? Kids cannot study, families cannot do what they should actually do because of the water. Is this still a huge problem, the water walks? Is there any change inside?
Here in my community, in the southern parts of Cameroon, in my regions, walking far away for distances to get water is a huge problem, because at times, since women and children are the highest users of water, when they go far to get water, they don't come back in time, and they miss a lot of, household chores. Children go and play and they don't come back in time. And that is why it is a huge problem. And that's why when I realized that many children have to walk far to get water, the main goal now is to see how we can identify projects that we can do closer to the homes, or closer to the schools, closer to the communities, by digging the wells or by tapping water from the springs uphill and bringing it by gravity through pipelines closer to their communities so that people will not have to walk for long distances to get water. So it is a huge problem, but gradually, it is gradually getting over. We're gradually solving the problems of access to safe, clean water closer to the homes.